hospital begged a Hell's Angel. A child's life hung by a thread. A pharmaceutical giant sealed the cure behind legal walls. What followed was not a war, but something far more clever. A city brought to its knees by 217 bikers to save one life. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The phone buzzed on the scratched bar, vibrating next to a half-empty beer bottle. Mercy Doc Callahan, the hospital administrator, never called this number after 6 p.m. unless the world was ending. Marcus St. Ryan, the president of the Iron Saints Charter, looked at the screen, his face a mask of calm. He picked it up. "Doc." Her voice was a tight wire ready to snap. "Marcus, it's Alina. They took the vinblastine, all of it. A truck from Lycurgo's farmer, with their own security, showed up with a court order. They seized our entire stock. A legal recall, they called it." Saint sat up straighter. The bar around him went quiet, the other members sensing the shift. And Lucy has maybe 12 hours without her next dose. The cancer, it's aggressive, Marcus. She's crashing. Doc's voice broke. She's asking for her Uncle Saint. Lucy, 14 years old, with her father's laughing eyes. Her dad, Joker, had taken a bullet meant for Saint 5 years back. The club was her family. Saint had held her hand after the chemo made all her hair fall out. He promised her she'd get better. "Where's the drug now?" Saint's voice was low, a gravelly rumble. "They'll have taken it to their main regional distribution warehouse on the industrial south side. It's a fortress, Marcus. Armed guards, cameras, biometrics. It's not a bank, it's worse." "We're not robbing a fortress, Doc," Saint said, his mind already clicking through options, faces, skills. "We're just getting one vial back. Sit tight, keep her alive. We are on our way." He hung up. The silence in the clubhouse was complete. 20 men looked at him, waiting. He stood, his chair scraping the concrete floor. Lycurgo's farmer just stole Lucy's medicine. They're letting Joker's little girl die to make a point about money. He didn't need to say more. A low growl went through the room. "We're not starting a war. We're not burning the place down. That's what they expect. We do something they can't predict. We're gonna give the city a headache. A big, distracting headache. And while everyone's rubbing their temples, we're gonna walk in and take what's ours." He pointed at a giant man with a meticulous braided beard. "Tiny, you know every trucker at the freight yards. I need the routes for every Lycurgo's delivery and distribution truck for the next 8 hours. Every stoplight they plan to sit at." Tiny grinned, pulling out his phone. "On it, Prez." "Rita," Saint said, turning to a fierce woman with sharp eyes, his VP and the club's tactical planner. She was already sketching on a napkin. "We need chaos. Legal, non-violent, beautiful chaos, all over the grid. I want their security looking everywhere but at their own front door." Rita nodded. "Distributed diversion, like locusts, a plague of minor annoyances, but how do we get the vial?" "Prospects," Saint said. 2 young men at the back straightened up, their cuts devoid of the full club patch. David and James, eager, clean-cut enough to look innocent. "You two are our retrieval team. You'll get the exact layout. You'll go in soft. No weapons, just balls and brains." David swallowed hard. "We walk in." In the confusion, Saint said, a plan crystallizing. When the whole city is screaming about blocked roads and broken-down trucks, a couple of guys in generic coveralls walking into a chaotic warehouse won't even register. You find the secured farmer fridge. You take one vial, just one, you walk out. You get it to Mercy at Mercy General. You die before you fail. Understood? "Yes, sir," they said in unison. The clubhouse exploded into motion. It was like watching a machine built for mayhem repurpose itself for precision. Phones came out. Calls were made. Old favors were called in. The Iron Saints didn't just ride bikes. They owned tow truck companies, auto shops, diners. They had cousins in the city works department, brothers in the trucking union, friends who led protest groups. An hour later, the war room was the bar. Maps of the city were spread out, marked with red and blue lines. Tiny had the routes. Rita had a timeline. "Stage 1, Rita said, her finger hitting a major crosstown artery. 3:00 p.m. A broken-down school bus, courtesy of Manny's auto, right at the merge onto the highway. It'll back up traffic for 2 miles in every direction. That gridlocks the Lycurgo's trucks coming from the North Depot. Stage 2, said Paul, the club's sergeant at arms, a man with knuckles like walnuts. 3:15 p.m. A spontaneous, environmental protest outside the city council building, organized by the Green Hearts group. They owe us for keeping their leader out of jail last year. They'll block the main downtown bridge that traps the trucks coming from the east. Stage 3, Tiny rumbled. 3:30 p.m. A coordinated sick-out by 3 of the union drivers. They'll park their big rigs sideways at key intersections near the South Side Industrial Park. Not angry, just suddenly ill. It'll seal the area like a cork. Saint listened, a slow smile spreading, and the warehouse itself. Rita pointed to the schematic David had gotten from a fired security guard. At 3:45 p.m., when the shift changes and the city is losing its mind, the main power feed to the warehouse's external cameras and perimeter alarms will experience a brief fluctuation. Thanks to our friend at the power company, a 10-minute window. The internal systems are on a backup, but security will be looking at monitors showing static, running outside to check, trying to call crews stuck in our traffic jams. Saint looked at David and James. 3:45 p.m. You go in the employee entrance during shift change. The door will be propped open by a cleaner who likes to smoke. He'll be distracted by a very loud, very fake argument between a couple in the parking lot. He glanced at a woman named Stella who winked. You have 10 minutes to get in, find the refrigerated vault in Sector C, get the vial, and get out. The code to the pharma fridge is 73041. Lucy's birthday. The prospects nodded, their faces pale but determined. Everyone else, Saint said, looking around the room. You're the locusts, you're the noise, be everywhere, be a nuisance, be ghosts, no violence, no property damage they can pin on us. We're just a bad day for the city, let's ride. At 2:55 p.m., the city was breathing normally. The sun was out. Then, like a single switch flipped, it began. On the highway, a yellow school bus hissed and died, smoke pouring from its engine. The driver, a saint named Mark, waved apologetically at the honking cars behind him. Traffic began to coil like a snake. Downtown, 50 people with signs about saving the trees suddenly sat down in the middle of the bridge. They started singing. Police cars, sirens wailing, converged, but couldn't get through the traffic already backing up from the bus. At a key intersection near the south side, a burly truck driver named Ruddy, a friend of Tiny's, climbed out of his cab, clutched his stomach, and pretended to vomit artistically on the curb. He then lay down. His 2 buddies blocked the other lanes with their trucks. The industrial park was cut off. At the Lycurgo's warehouse, Security Chief Daniel watched his monitors with growing unease. Calls started flooding in. All our trucks are stuck. The police can't get through. What's going on? Just keep the perimeter secure, he barked. It's probably some coordinated protest crap. But a knot tightened in his gut. It felt too precise. At 3:44 p.m., the lights in the security office flickered. Daniel's bank of external monitor screens fizzed to black. What the hell? Power surge on the main feed, a guard yelled. Backup is holding for the interior, but we are blind outside. Get someone to check the transformer, Daniel roared, storming outside. He saw 2 of his guards already heading towards the fence. In the parking lot, a man and a woman were screaming at each other, the woman throwing what looked like a wedding ring into the bushes. And get those idiots out of here. David and James, in gray coveralls with generic facilities logos, walked calmly towards the employee entrance. Their hearts were thunder in their chests. As they approached, an older man in janitorial clothes gave a slight nod and held the door open with his hip, lighting a cigarette and turning to watch the dramatic couple. The prospects slipped inside. The warehouse was vast, a cathedral of consumer goods, but they moved with purpose, following the map in their heads. Sector A, Sector B, they turned a corner and almost ran into a forklift driver. Whoa, AZ. You guys lost? The driver asked. James forced a smile. HVAC check on the pharma unit, heard there was a power flicker. The driver shrugged. Yeah, weird day, it's down there C block, Badge readers acting up, though, used the manual code. They nodded thanks and walked on, not daring to look at each other. The door to Sector C was marked with a red biohazard sign. David punched in the code 73041. The light flashed green. The door clicked open. The air inside was cold. Rows of specialized refrigerators hummed. They found the one labeled Oncology Vinblastine. It had a digital lock. David's hands were shaking. He entered the same code. Nothing. He tried again. A red X flashed. "It's not working," he whispered, panic rising. "Try it backwards," James hissed, watching the door. David fumbled, typing 14037. The lock beeped green. The door swung open. Inside were boxes and boxes of the drug. They only needed one vial. James grabbed a small, insulated pouch from his pocket. David reached in, his fingers closing around a single, small glass vial. It felt impossibly light, impossibly important. He placed it in the pouch. They closed the fridge, turned, and walked out, shutting the Sector C door behind them. They were 10 steps down the corridor when a voice stopped them. "Hey, you two." They froze. A security guard, younger than them, was walking over, his hand resting on his belt. "Did you just come out of C?" James turned, his face a mask of calm. "Yeah, power surge check, all good in there." The guard studied them. "I didn't get a work order for that. Let me see your IDs." This was it. They had no real IDs. David's mind raced. He started patting his pockets. "Sure, man, I've got it right." He deliberately fumbled, letting the pouch slip from his hand. It hit the floor with a soft thud. "Clumsy," James muttered, bending down to pick it up. But the guard was faster. He snatched the pouch. "What's this?" "Our lunch," David said too quickly. The guard unzipped the pouch. He saw the vial. His eyes went wide. "This is a controlled..." He reached for his radio. James moved. It wasn't a violent move. It was a distraction. He pointed wildly down the hall. "Sir, is that smoke?" The guard's head snapped around. In that split second, David brought his own radio to his mouth and barked into it, his voice mimicking the security chief's gruff tone he'd heard earlier. "All units, smoke reported in East Loading Bay, respond." The static-filled order crackled from the guard's own radio. Confusion flashed across his face. Protocol Ward with suspicion. "Protocol 1, stay right here," he ordered, then sprinted down the hall towards the non-existent fire. David and James didn't wait. They walked fast but not running back the way they came. The janitor was still at the door. He saw their faces and pushed it open. They stepped out into the late afternoon sun. The fake couple was gone. The parking lot was quiet. They walked to a beat-up, unmarked white van and got in. David started the engine. They drove slowly, calmly, past the gate guard who was arguing with a delivery driver about access. They were 2 blocks away when James let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for years. "We got it." David didn't answer. He just drove, his knuckles white on the wheel, heading for Mercy General. Back at the warehouse, Daniel was piecing it together. The traffic jams were clearing. The protests were dispersing. The sick truck drivers had miraculously recovered. It was all too neat. He ran a check on the pharma inventory. The system showed all units accounted for, but a physical spot check, one vial of vinblastine was missing. One single vial, lost in a sea of thousands. He stared at the report, a cold fury settling in his bones. They hadn't been attacked. They hadn't been robbed. They'd been irritated to death. And in the middle of that citywide itch, someone had plucked a single grain of sand from the beach. It was audacious. It was impossible. It was genius. He knew who it was. Everyone knew the Iron Saints looked after Lucy, but he had no proof. No broken locks, no disabled alarms, no witnesses, just a city that had a really bad hour and a missing vial that could have been a paperwork error. He slammed his fist on the desk. They had beaten him with chaos. The van screeched to a halt at the ambulance bay. David jumped out, the pouch clutched in his hand. Saint and Rita were already there, waiting with Doc Mercy. Wordlessly, David handed over the pouch. Mercy didn't thank them. She turned and ran, her shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. They followed her to the pediatric oncology floor, to Lucy's room. The girl was pale, her breathing shallow. A nurse immediately took the vial, checked it, and prepared the injection. Saint went to Lucy's bedside. He took her small, cool hand in his large, calloused one. "Hey kid, took a little ride for you." Lucy's eyes fluttered open. She gave him the ghost of a smile. "Uncle Saint, did you bring the noise?" He smiled back, a real one, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Always, baby girl, just for you." The nurse administered the drug. The room was silent, watching the clear liquid push into the IV line, travel down the tube, and disappear into Lucy's arm. Minutes ticked by. Then, slowly, some of the terrible tension seemed to leave her small body. Her breathing deepened. She fell into a real, peaceful sleep. Doc Mercy looked at the monitor, then at Saint. Her eyes were full of tears. "It's working, she's stabilizing." Saint nodded. He looked at David and James, who stood in the doorway looking young and scared and proud. He walked over to them. He didn't say anything. He just took his own cut, his leather vest, the symbol of his life, off his shoulders. He held it for a second, then he put it on David, and then he took Rita's spare VP patch and put it on James's cut, right over their prospect rockers. They were in, full members. "You stole a grain of wheat from a mountain," Saint said, his voice thick. "For family, that's what we do." That night the clubhouse was loud with celebration. Not a war victory, but a different kind. They hadn't given up their empire. They'd used it in a way no one expected. The story of the great citywide traffic jam was on the news, blamed on a bizarre coincidence. No one mentioned a missing vial. Saint stood on the porch, looking out at the bikes. Rita came up beside him, handing him a beer. Their shoulders touched. The chemistry between them was a constant, quiet hum, a shared history, a deep trust, a love that didn't need words. She leaned her head against his arm. "Pretty good day's work, old man," she said. He put his arm around her, pulling her close. "It's not over. Lycurgos will know it was us. They'll come back differently." Rita looked up at him, her eyes fierce in the neon light. "Let them. They play with spreadsheets and lawsuits. We play for keeps, and we just proved we're smarter." Inside, the music played. Lucy was safe. The club was whole. They had fought corporate murder with organized anarchy, and they had won. For now, the open road ahead looked clear, but Saint knew better. The fight had just changed shape, and the Iron Saints were ready. The celebration in the clubhouse was like a pressure valve releasing. Beers were cracked open, stories of the day's chaos were told and exaggerated. The prospects, now full members, David Cypher and James Doc Jr., were getting their backs pounded by laughing, proud brothers. The air smelled of leather, beer, and victory. But on the porch, Saint and Rita watched the quiet street. The calm felt fragile. "You think the cleaner will talk?" Rita asked, sipping her beer. Saint shook his head. He's already on a plane to visit his grandkids in Florida, courtesy of the club's vacation fund. His memory of today is gonna be real fuzzy. And the security guard who saw the vial. Confused, Saint said. Heard conflicting orders, saw no smoke. He'll write it up as a stress hallucination. They'll blame the system glitch. But Daniel, the head of security, he's not stupid. He knows. He knows it was a surgical strike, Rita finished. And he knows he got outplayed. Men like that, they hate that more than being outgunned. Inside, a big man named Tiny was telling the story of the sick truckers for the third time. And Ruddy, he's laying there, moaning about his guts, and he looks up at the cop and says, "Officer, I think it was the gas station sushi." The cop just looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. The room erupted in laughter. The mood was light, but a thread of tension remained. They had pulled it off, but the act itself was a declaration. The Iron Saints had just shown a multi-billion-dollar corporation that their walls meant nothing. 3 days later, Lucy was sitting up in bed, color in H. "Tell me the story again, Uncle Saint," she said, her voice stronger. "Which part?" "The part where your Uncle Paul pretended to be a tree hugger with a sign that said, 'Honk, if you love photosynthesis.'" Lucy giggled. "No, the part where you were the general." Saint pulled his chair closer. "Wasn't a general, kid. Was just a guy with a lot of noisy friends. We made a distraction so big, the bad guys didn't see the good guys walking right past them." It's like a magic trick, she said wisely. Exactly, now you rest. Doc Mercy says you need it. He tucked the blanket around her. As he stood to leave, he saw a man in a sharp, expensive suit walk past the room's window, accompanied by a hospital administrator who wasn't Mercy. The man's eyes scanned the room, lingering on Saint's cut before moving on. Saint's blood went cold. He found Mercy in her office, looking stressed. Who was the suit? Mercy rubbed her temples. Regional director from Lycurgo's Pharma, name's Alistair Cray. He's here for a courtesy visit and audit, checking inventory compliance after the unfortunate recall incident. He's asking a lot of questions about our emergency procurement protocols. He's sniffing, Saint growled. Of course he is, Mercy said, but he's doing it with spreadsheets and lawyers, Marcus. He can't prove anything. The vial we used, on paper, it's from an older batch that was supposedly destroyed. The paperwork trail is a spaghetti mess, and he knows it. He's here to scare us. He doesn't scare me, Saint said, but the look on Mercy's face did. He should. This isn't a street fight. If he decides to, he can cut off all their drugs to this entire hospital. He can sue us into oblivion on some cooked-up charge. He has the power to make Lucy's care and the care of hundreds disappear with a signature. Saint left the hospital with a new kind of anger simmering in his gut. This wasn't an enemy you could look in the eye. It was a ghost in a suit fighting with paper cuts. Back at the clubhouse, he called church, an official meeting. The mood was grim. Lycurgo's sent a man named Cray, Saint told the gathered members. He's the new kind of war. He's not here with guns. He's here with contracts and audits. They're going to try to choke us and the hospital legally. Rita leaned forward. So we need to find his pressure points, not his securities. What does a corporate shark like Cray care about? His reputation, said a quiet voice from the corner. It was Jennifer, the club's archivist. She handled their books, their legitimate fronts, and their digital footprint. She was a whiz with a computer. His career, his stock options. He's not an owner, he's a hired gun. He needs to show results to his bosses. Saint nodded. Jen, I want you to dig, find out everything about Cray, where he lives, what he drives, what he's afraid of. And what do we do in the meantime? Paul asked, cracking his knuckles. We run our businesses, we stay clean, we be pillars of the damn community, Saint said. We give him nothing to grab onto. The next week was a quiet war. Cray's audit at the hospital turned up minor discrepancies, resulting in fines that strained the budget. Rumors started at city council meetings about the questionable associations of some hospital board members, a clear dig at Mercy. A local news piece, thinly sourced, suggested the chaotic traffic day might have been a diversion for criminal activity, though no specifics were given. The club felt the pressure too. Their legitimate auto shops got surprise inspections from the city. Health and safety violations were suddenly found. Their tow truck licenses were put under review. It was death by 1,000 bureaucratic paper cuts. Jennifer worked tirelessly in a back room filled with computer screens. One night, she called Saint and Rita in. Got him, she said, a sly smile on her face. Alistair Cray is a climber. He's angling for a VP position. To get it, he's got to close a big deal, the acquisition of a smaller biotech firm called Veritas Labs. The deal is shaky. Veritas's founder, a doctor named Elena Rose, is hesitant. She thinks Lycurgo's will jack up the prices on her life-saving gene therapy. She pulled up a picture of Dr. Elena Rose, a woman in her 40s with intelligent, tired eyes. Cray's job is to smooth it over, get her to sign. The deal signing is in 4 days at a private retreat up at Lake Serene. Very hush-hush. Saint studied the image. What's her pressure point? Her clinic, Jennifer said. She runs a non-profit clinic in the old factory district. It's her life's work. It's also deeply in debt. Lycurgo's is dangling the buyout money as a way to save it, but she knows they'll probably just close it down after the deal. Rita saw it first. We don't attack Cray, we give Dr. Rose another option. Saint's mind raced. We can't give her millions. No, Rita said, but we can give her security, peace of mind. We can make her a promise that Lycurgo's can't. The plan was risky. stepping even further into a world they didn't know. The next day, Saint and Rita, dressed in clothes that didn't scream biker, visited the Veritas community clinic. It was a clean, bright space in a worn-down neighborhood, full of people who looked like they couldn't afford care anywhere else. They asked to see Dr. Rose. They were shown to a small, cluttered office. Elena Rose looked up, wary. "Can I help you?" "Dr. Rose," Saint began, his voice low and direct. "My name is Marcus. This is Rita. We represent a community organization. We understand you're in negotiations with Lycurgo's farmer." Her wariness turned to defensiveness. "That's confidential. Who are you with?" "With the people who just cost Lycurgo's a vial of vinblastine and made them look like fools," Rita said simply. Elena's eyes went wide. She'd heard the internal rumors, the impossible diversion. She looked from Rita's steady gaze to Saint's impassive face. "That was you." "We have a common problem with Lycurgo's," Saint said. "They use life as leverage. We don't like that. We hear they're pressuring you to sell. We hear you're worried about your clinic." "What's it to you?" Elena asked, though her curiosity was piqued. "Sign with them and they own you. They'll close this place. The people here will have nowhere to go," Rita said. "Don't sign and they'll crush you with debt and lawsuits. You need a third option." "And you're offering me a third option? What protection?" Elena almost laughed, but it was hollow. "Yes," Saint said, utterly serious. "Not the kind with guns, the kind with eyes. We have businesses, construction, trucking, security. We can get you supplies at cost. We can have our guys do repairs on this building for free. We can make sure your deliveries always arrive and that no one from Lycurgo's or anyone else harasses your staff or your patients. You keep your clinic, you keep your therapy affordable. You tell Cray to go to hell." Elena stared at them. It was insane. It was an offer from the shadows, but it was also the first real alternative she'd heard that wasn't a corporate death sentence. "What do you want in return?" "The deal dies," Rita said. "You publicly reject Lycurgo's, you embarrass Cray, that's all. We're not investors, we're allies." "And why should I trust you?" Saint stood up. He placed a single, worn photo on her desk. It was of him, a younger Joker, and a tiny, laughing Lucy on his shoulders. "Because they took the medicine from this girl, my brother's daughter. They were going to let her die for profit. We stopped them. Your therapy will save people like her. We want you to keep doing that. That's the only payment we want." Elena looked at the photo, at the raw love and loyalty in it. She looked back at the two formidable people in her office. It was a devil's bargain, but the other option was a deal with a different, more polished devil. "I need to think," she said. "You have 2 days," Rita said. "The signing is at Lake Serene. Let us know before then." The club waited on edge. This was far outside their lane. They were traders, fighters, hustlers, not corporate saboteurs, but the enemy had changed the battlefield. The next evening, Elena Rose called the number Rita had left. "I'm in," she said, her voice firm. "I'll reject the deal, but Cray won't take no for an answer. He's persuasive, and he has people." "Just get yourself to the retreat," Saint said. "We'll handle the rest. You'll be safe." The plan for Lake Serene was simpler, but required finesse. The retreat was exclusive, guarded. They couldn't swarm it. Instead, they infiltrated it. Jennifer, using her skills, got 2 of their prospects' jobs as temporary catering staff for the event. Stella, with her acting chops, became a last-minute replacement masseuse for the retreat spa, thanks to a generous tip to the real therapist. The day of the signing arrived. The retreat was a sleek, modern lodge overlooking the lake. Cray was there, confident, smiling. Dr. Rose arrived, looking nervous but resolved. The meeting was in a private conference room. As Cray laid out the final contracts, smiling his polished smile, Dr. Rose took a deep breath. "Mr. Cray, I've considered your offer very carefully, and I must decline. Veritas Labs will not be acquired by Lycurgo's." Cray's smile didn't falter, but it froze. "Dr. Rose, I assure you this is a mistake. The financial security for your clinic is an illusion," she finished. "I've secured alternative backing for the clinic. My work will remain independent and affordable." "Alternative backing?" Cray's voice turned icy. From whom I know every player in this field. From the community, she said, standing up. This discussion is over. As she turned to leave, Cray stood, his facade cracking. This isn't over, Elena. You're making a very, very powerful enemy. You think your little clinic will survive without us? I will bury it. I will bury you. The door opened. The prospect posing as a waiter was there, refilling a water carafe. He heard everything. So did Stella, who was lingering in the hall, pretending to check her massage schedule. Dr. Rose walked out, head high, her heart pounding. Cray stood alone in the room, his face a mask of fury. He pulled out his phone and made a call. She's walking out. The deal is dead. Initiate Plan B. I want her clinic's funding sources investigated and destroyed. I want her reputation shredded. Make it happen. What Cray didn't know was that his call, made on the retreat's unsecured Wi-Fi, was being captured and recorded by Jennifer, who was parked in a van a mile away with a powerful receiver. Dr. Rose was escorted safely off the property by Saint and Rita, who were waiting in a nondescript SUV. She was shaking. He threatened me, clearly. He did, Rita said, handing her a digital recorder. And we have it, along with his order to initiate Plan B. That's conspiracy, blackmail, and intent to cause harm. Not very good for a rising corporate star's reputation. Back at the clubhouse, Jennifer packaged the audio file. She also included digital copies of Cray's less-than-ethical search history from the retreat's network, and some financial sleight of hand she discovered in Lycurgos's public filings. The next morning, an encrypted email package arrived at the desks of the major financial newspapers, the State Attorney General's office, and the board of directors at Lycurgos Pharma. The subject line was simple: the Cray methodology. The fallout was swift and merciless. The board, facing a potential scandal, threw Cray under the bus. He was fired for exceeding his authority and engaging in unethical conduct. The Veritas acquisition was cancelled. The story was a one-day blip in the business section, but it was enough. Cray was gone. A week later, Saint and Rita stood outside the Veritas clinic. A crew from the Saint's construction company was on the roof, fixing a long-standing leak, free of charge. A delivery truck from a distributor owned by a friend of Tiny's was unloading medical supplies at cost. Dr. Rose came out to meet them. The pressure is gone, for now at least, thank you. Don't thank us, Saint said, just keep saving people. As they rode back to the clubhouse, the wind in their faces, Rita hugged Saint tighter from her seat on the back of his bike. We beat them at their own game, she shouted over the engine. For now, Saint replied, his voice carrying back to her. But we showed them something. We showed them that our family, our territory, our code, it's not just about bikes and bars. It's a wall they can't buy or break. They'll think twice next time. That night, the clubhouse felt different. It wasn't just a haven from the law anymore. It was a headquarters. They had defended their own not with brute force, but with a sharper, smarter kind of strength. They had protected a little girl and saved a clinic. The empire hadn't fallen, it had evolved. David and James, now fully patched, were learning the ropes. Lucy was getting stronger, her laughter once again ringing out when she visited on weekends. Saint stood on the porch with Rita as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The road ahead was still long, and new enemies would always appear in suits or in cuts, but they had each other. They had their brothers and sisters. They had a code that meant something. Rita leaned into him, and he kissed her forehead, a simple, charged moment of pure love and partnership in their chaotic world. They had fought corporate murder with organized anarchy, and they had won. Not with a bang, but with a perfectly executed, city-sized distraction and a well-placed whisper of truth. They were the Iron Saints, and they were just getting started. Thank you for riding with us. Did you think they'd succeed, or was the plan too risky? Subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Does your city have a story like this? Your support helps us bring more true tales of the unexpected.